Evan was a human single dad and a mechanic who lived in a small town at the edge of the spaceport. His workshop was old, noisy, and full of tools, metal pieces, and half-broken machines. The floor smelled like oil and dust. The walls shook every time a large ship flew overhead. But Evan never complained. He worked with calm hands and a quiet mind. He fixed what others threw away. He repaired what others called useless. He made broken things breathe again. On this cold evening, an old airship stood in front of him. Its wing was bent, its engine was smoking, and its wires were hanging loose like torn veins. Evan looked at it with focus. He picked up his wrench and started working slowly, carefully, like he always did. But then he felt something strange. Someone was watching him. He turned his head. But the workshop looked empty. Only shadows, tools, and quiet air. Then he heard a soft sound, a small breath. Small claw tapping the floor. Evan slowly walked to the corner near the supply shelves. At first, he thought it was a cat or a lost animal. But when his eyes adjusted to the dim light, he froze in surprise. A little girl was hiding there, but she was not a normal girl. Her skin had tiny shimmering scales. Her eyes glowed like amber fire. Her fingernails were sharp like little talons. She looked thin, tired, and scared, like she had been running for a long time. Evan did not move fast. He did not shout. He did not step forward. He just spoke softly. "You okay?" The little dragon girl swallowed and shook her head. She looked at the floor like she was afraid to make eye contact. Her small shoulders trembled. Her tail, thin and weak, curled around her ankle. Evan placed his wrench down and sat on a crate so he would not look tall or threatening. He wiped his hands on a cloth and spoke again in a gentle tone. "You hungry?" The girl lifted her eyes, shocked by the question. No one had asked her that before, at least not with kindness. She nodded once, very slowly. Evan stood up and walked to a small cooler. He took out half of a sandwich, the one he had saved for later. He brought it to her and placed it on the floor so she could take it without fear. The girl sniffed it first, then took a small bite. Her eyes widened. She ate faster, like she had never tasted food like this. "What's your name?" Evan asked. She hesitated, then whispered, "Lyra." Her voice was soft, like wind passing through glass. "That's a good name," Evan said. Lyra watched him with surprise again. No one had ever said her name was good. No one had ever spoken to her like she mattered. She studied his face, his calm eyes, his steady breath. Humans were supposed to be weak, small, unimportant. But he did not look weak to her. He looked strong in a different way, a quiet way, outside. Thunder rumbled across the sky. The air pressure changed. The workshop lights flickered. Lyra's eyes widened with fear. "She is coming," she whispered. "Who?" Evan asked. Lyra stepped back, her wings trembling even though they were too small to fly. Her voice shook. "My mother." Evan thought that meant danger. But before he could ask more, the ground shook. A roar of fire echoed from the sky. The metal roof rattled like it might tear apart. Tools fell off hooks and clattered across the floor. Lyra looked at Evan with a mix of fear and hope. "You should run," she said. Evan didn't move. "Why would I run?" he asked. Lyra stared at him confused. "Because she is the Dragon Queen," she whispered. "And she does not like humans." Outside, a massive shadow covered the workshop. Flames lit the horizon. Soldiers in scaled armor gathered. Winds blasted dust through the cracks in the door. Evan stood still. Lyra grabbed his sleeve with shaking claws. "She will ask me to choose a father," she said with a trembling voice. Evan's heart paused for a moment. Unsure what that meant, Lyra looked up at him, eyes glowing like burning gold. "And I already chose." The workshop doors shook again as a blast of wind smashed against them. Dust fell from the ceiling, and the windows rattled like they might explode. Evan placed himself between Lyra and the entrance without thinking. He did not know why. It was instinct, the same instinct he used when his daughter was alive. The same instinct that never left him. The metal hinges groaned, the bolts strained out, then the doors blew open. A wave of hot air rushed inside, carrying sparks and ashes. The workshop lights flickered, died, then came back weak and trembling. Evan raised his arm to block the heat. Lyra crouched behind him, her small claws clutching his shirt. Outside stood soldiers tall, armored, scaled, and burning with red patterns. Their spears crackled like lightning. Their eyes glowed with the same fire Lyra had, but harder, colder, sharper. They formed two lines, creating a path, and down that path came a figure taller than any of them. Her wings spread wide, wide enough to block the moonlight. Her horns curved like ancient stone. Her armor shimmered like molten gold. Her eyes burned like suns. Her presence filled the air with pressure that made the tools shake and the airship engine spark. This was the Dragon Queen. She stepped into the workshop, and the flames around her dimmed as if even fire bowed to her. Her gaze swept across the room, slow and heavy, until it landed on Evan, a human, a simple mechanic. A man with oil on his hands and dust on his jacket. She stared at him as if she could not believe he existed. Lyra stepped out from behind him, trembling. Her voice shook as she spoke. "Mother." The Dragon Queen's expression softened for a moment, just a breath, just a flicker. Then her eyes sharpened again, and her voice echoed like thunder rolling through metal. "Why are you here?" Lyra lowered her head. "I was hiding." The Queen stepped closer. The floor heated beneath her feet. The soldiers outside bowed their heads. "From who?" the Queen asked. Lyra hesitated. Her claws curled. "From them. From all of them. They laugh. They say I am weak. They say I am small. They say I cannot be a princess." The Queen's eyes narrowed with anger, not at Lyra, but at the memory of those voices. But then she looked at Evan, and her anger shifted into something else: confusion, disbelief, curiosity. "And why is a human standing between you and danger?" she asked. Evan did not step back. His voice was calm. She was scared. The soldiers inhaled sharply. No one spoke to the Dragon Queen so simply. No one answered her without bowing, without shaking, without fear. The Queen tilted her head slightly. "You are not afraid of me?" Evan shrugged. "Fear doesn't help fix anything." The Queen studied him like he was a puzzle made of strange metal. Lyra looked between them, holding her breath. Then the Queen spoke words that made the air grow still. "The princess must choose a father." Evan blinked, unsure he heard correctly. Lyra whispered to him, voice trembling, "It is our tradition. A princess chooses the one who will guide her, protect her, shape her future." The Queen raised her chin. "All kingdoms wait for her choice. Warriors, generals, mages, royal bloodlines. The galaxy expects a strength." She looked at Evan again, as if daring him to shake. "And yet she is here. With you." Lyra stepped forward. Her voice wavered, but her eyes shone. "I choose him." The soldiers gasped. The workshop seemed to stop breathing. The Queen's wings tightened. "You choose a human?" she asked slowly. Lyra nodded, tears in her glowing eyes. "He did not shout. He did not push me. He did not tell me to leave. He gave me food. He spoke like I mattered." The Queen turned back to Evan. "If this is true, then he must prove it." Evan raised an eyebrow. "Prove what?" The Queen's voice thundered with finality. "That you are worthy to live." Outside, flames rose into the sky. Soldiers lifted their weapons. The air itself felt sharp. The Dragon Palace stood like a mountain carved into the sky. Its towers were made of black stone and glowing veins of lava. Its gates were shaped like dragon jaws, and its bridges hung over rivers of molten fire. Evan had never seen anything like it. He walked beside Lyra, surrounded by soldiers who watched him like he was a bug they wanted to crush. The air was hot, thick, and sharp with smoke. The palace walls echoed with roars, whispers, and crackling flames. Lyra walked close to Evan, her small steps nervous, but her eyes proud. She had chosen him, and she was not taking it back. Inside the great hall, hundreds of nobles waited, dragons in human-like forms, scaled, tall, powerful, with armor that shimmered like burning gems. Their wings folded behind them, their claws tapped against the marble floor, their eyes glowed with cold judgment. When Evan entered, they burst into laughter. A human? This is a joke. He is small. He smells like oil. He works with tools like a servant. They mocked him openly, loudly, without mercy. Lyra's shoulders tightened. She looked like she wanted to hide again. Evan noticed, and he placed his hand gently on her back. It was a small gesture, but it made her breathe easier. The Dragon Queen stepped forward, wings spreading, and the hall fell silent. Her voice boomed. The princess has chosen a father. Gasps spread through the hall like sparks hitting dry leaves. A massive general stepped forward. Scales dark red, jaw sharp, voice full of anger. This cannot be allowed. A human cannot shape royal blood. Another noble shouted, he has no strength. A third hissed, he should bow. Why does he not kneel? All eyes turned to Evan. He stood straight. He did not bow. He did not tremble. He did not look away. He simply said, calmly, my knees work fine. I only bend them when fixing engines. The hall erupted again, rage, disbelief, shock. Lyra tried to hide a tiny smile. The queen stared at Evan, not angry, curious. Why do you not fear them? She asked. Evan's voice was steady, almost quiet. Fear never saved anyone. The nobles hissed louder. Fire sparked in their throats. Some raised their wings. Some pointed their claws. Some demanded punishment. But Evan did not react. He stood like a wall that could not be pushed. The queen raised her hand, and silence snapped through the hall like a whip. The tradition stands, she declared. The princess has chosen. The human will be tested. A cold wind blew through the hall despite the heat. What test? A noble demanded. The queen turned slowly, her eyes glowing. He will survive one night. Inside the dragon palace. Gasps again, whispers like crackling. Fire, even Lyra froze. No human has ever lasted an hour, someone muttered. There are beasts, another whispered. And traps, another added. And shadows that eat. Breath, someone hissed. Lyra grabbed Evan's sleeve. You do not have to do this, she whispered. Her voice shaking, Evan looked at her gently. You chose me. I won't walk away. Her eyes filled with golden tears. Guard stepped forward and opened a giant stone door leading deeper into the palace. Hot air poured out, along with distant growls and scraping sounds against metal. The queen looked at Evan one last time. If you live until sunrise, she said, your place will be honored. If you die, your body will be returned to the dirt you came from. Evan nodded once, calm as always. Lyra tried to speak, but her voice broke. No one was ever kind to me until you, she whispered. Please, come back. Evan placed his hand on her head gently, like a father would. I fix broken things, he said softly. Even myself. Then he stepped through the door. Stone slammed shut behind him. Darkness swallowed him. The palace roared with approval. Lyra trembled alone, and the queen turned away, but her eyes were not calm. They were uneasy. Because for the first time in her life, she could not predict the human. The darkness inside the palace tunnel was thick like smoke and heavy like whetstone. Evan stood still for a moment, letting his eyes adjust. The air smelled like metal fire, and something older, something that had lived here long before humans ever walked the stars. Behind him, the stone door remained sealed. There was no going back. Ahead of him, a faint orange glow pulsed like a slow heartbeat. Evan took a breath and moved forward. The ground beneath him was uneven, carved rock mixed with metal plates. His boots scraped softly. Dripping echoes bounced along the walls, making it sound like someone or something walked beside him. But he didn't rush. He walked with the same calm steps he used when repairing a fragile engine part. As he moved deeper, the glow grew brighter until he reached a massive chamber. Lava flowed in channels through the floor like glowing rivers. Bridges of stone connected platforms, and chains hung from the ceiling, swaying gently even though there was no wind. Then Evan heard it. A slow breath. Deep. Animal. Waiting. He didn't see the creature at first, only its eyes. Two golden embers staring from the shadows. Then a second pair. Then a third. Three beasts, bodies covered in black scales, jaws lined with sharp teeth, horns curled like hooks. They moved like lions, but bigger, much bigger. Their claws scraped sparks across the stone. Any other human would have run. Evan didn't. He studied the room instead. He noticed vents in the walls. He noticed gears hidden behind metal grates. He noticed that the lava flow changed direction every few seconds, controlled by some mechanism. This place wasn't random, it was engineered. He whispered to himself. This isn't a hunting room. It's a system. One of the beasts stepped closer, growling low. Evan slowly removed the metal rod he kept in his jacket, something he used for repairs. He didn't raise it like a weapon. He tapped the floor gently near a gear slot. The metal echoed with a hollow ring. The beasts paused. Their ears twitched. They sensed something shift. Evan crouched and inserted the rod into the gear slot, turning it slowly. A deep grinding sound rumbled through the chamber. The bridges rotated. The lava flow surged into a different channel. Heat blasted upward in front of the beasts. They backed away, confused. Evan stood again. Calm. I don't need to fight you, he whispered. Just understand the room. He crossed a bridge as the beast circled from another path. They were fast, but the machinery was faster. Evan turned another lever, and a wall of metal dropped down, blocking them. They roared and slammed against it, but Evan kept moving. The chamber opened into another passage. This one was colder, almost freezing. Frost formed along the walls. Evan's breath turned white. Strange whispers echoed, like distant voices speaking in languages older than memory. He kept walking. He reached a narrow corridor, lined with statues, dragons carved with open mouths. Their eyes were hollow, but Evan noticed wires inside them. Pressure plates on the floor. A trap. He found a loose stone and tossed it ahead. The statues fired blasts of ice. Sharp like knives, he waited until they reset, then stepped only on the metal rivets, not on the stone plates, crossing safely. Ahead, the corridor widened into a circular room with a glowing crystal in the center. The crystal pulsed with energy, lighting the room blue. Evan stepped closer, feeling warmth in his chest, like a heartbeat that wasn't his. Then a voice spoke from the darkness. You were not supposed to make it this far. Evan turned. A tall figure stepped into the light, scaled, armored, and holding a spear crackling with blue flames. His eyes were sharp, filled with hate and pride. He was not a beast, not a guard, not a test. He was a rival. A royal warrior. Lyra had mentioned him, someone who wanted to be chosen. Someone who believed he deserved to shape the princess. He pointed the spear at Evan. You are a human. You fix machines. You bow to no one. And she chose you. His voice dripped venom. So I will kill you before sunrise. Evan didn't flinch. You don't scare me, he said quietly. The warrior snarled. But before he could strike, the crystal in the center pulsed, and the room shook. The walls cracked. The ground opened. Lava roared beneath them. The warrior stumbled. Evan grabbed a hanging chain, swinging to a ledge as the floor collapsed. The warrior fell, barely catching himself. The palace shook again. Someone was controlling the test. Someone wanted Evan dead. Far above the shifting chambers, Lyra stood on a high balcony of the Dragon Palace, her claws gripping the railing as she stared down into the fiery depths. The sky outside was dark, and the stars trembled behind smoke and clouds. The palace glowed like a living volcano, every window flickering with firelight and shadows. But Lyra's eyes were fixed on only one thing: Evan, somewhere below, fighting to stay alive. Guards surrounded her, but she ignored them. Nobles whispered behind her back, calling her foolish, weak, broken. Their voices echoed in the hall, sharp like knives. She chose a human. She shamed the royal blood. She is unfit for the throne. Lyra closed her eyes, but she could still hear them. She always heard them. Since she was little, she had been the smallest, the quietest, the least fierce. Her wings grew late. Her fire was weak. Her scales were softer than the others. And the palace had never let her forget it. But then she remembered the workshop. The smell of oil. The sound of tools. The way Evan looked at her, not like a princess, not like a problem, but like a child who mattered. She opened her eyes again. Far across the balcony, the Dragon Queen watched the testing chamber through a floating flame mirror. Her face was unreadable strong, sharp, distant, yet her eyes flickered with something unfamiliar. Lyra walked toward her slowly. "Mother," she whispered. Queen did not turn her head. "He's still." "Lives," she said. Lyra swallowed. "Because he understands things we do not," she replied softly. "He sees what others miss." The Queen's jaw tightened. "He is human. Humans break." Lyra lowered her voice. "So do dragons." That made the Queen look at her. For a moment, mother and daughter stared at each other, two flames, one small and shaking, the other tall and controlled. Then Lyra spoke again, her voice trembling. "When I was young, the others mocked me. They burned my wings. They pushed me from the sky. They said I was wrong. You told me to ignore them, to stand strong, but I could not. I was alone." The Queen's expression did not change, but her eyes did. Lyra continued, "Today, for the first time in my life, someone stood between me and danger. Not for power, not for favor, not for the crown." Her voice broke. "He stood there because I was scared." The Queen looked away, back to the flame mirror. Evan was climbing a narrow ledge above a sea of molten fire, his hands steady, his breath calm. Below him, the rival warrior tried to climb as well. Roaring in anger, Lyra stepped closer. "That is why I chose him," she whispered. "Not to shame you. Not to shame our people. I chose him because he made me feel safe." The Queen closed her eyes for a brief moment, so brief that no one else would have noticed. But Lyra did. "You think safety makes strength?" the Queen asked. Lyra nodded. Double quotes, "Yes, because I was never safe until today." The Queen said nothing. The palace shook as the chamber shifted again. Lava burst upward, lighting the mirror in red. Evan jumped to another platform just before the flames touched him. Lyra gasped, claws gripping her dress. The Queen watched him more closely now. "He should be dead," she said quietly. "But he is not," Lyra answered. "Down below." Evan reached a control wheel built into the wall. He examined it quickly and turned it in the opposite direction of instinct, reversing the trap instead of activating it. The lava lowered. The platforms aligned. The chamber stabilized. Lyra's voice softened. "He fixes what is broken." The Queen stared at her daughter. And for the first time, truly the first time, she saw how fragile her child was beneath the scales. She saw the fear that had shaped her, the loneliness that had hardened her, the longing that had guided her choice. The Queen whispered, "You think he can fix you?" Lyra wiped her eyes. No. But he can help me feel like I do not need fixing. Silence fell between them. Then a horn echoed through the palace, a deep, ancient sound. A messenger ran into the hall, bowing low. Your Majesty! A message from the Outer Empire. They have learned of the princess's choice. The queen's wings tensed. What did they say? The messenger trembled. They say the princess must die before the human becomes her bond. Lyra froze. The queen's eyes burned with fury. And far below, unaware of the danger rising outside the palace walls, Evan reached the final door. The great hall of the Dragon Palace was silent when Evan was brought back from the trial chamber. His clothes were dusty, his arms scraped, his hair singed at the ends, but he walked with steady steps. 2 guards led him, but he did not look like a prisoner. He looked like someone who had simply finished a long shift in his workshop. The nobles stared at him with disbelief. Some whispered. Some growled. Some stepped back as if afraid to be near him. No human had ever survived the night trial. Yet here he was, breathing, standing, unbroken. Lyra rushed forward, her eyes bright with relief. You came back, she whispered, voice shaking. Evan gave a small nod. You asked me to, he replied simply. Lyra's heart felt warm, like a flame that didn't burn. Before she could say more, the hall darkened. The Dragon Queen entered. The floor heated under her steps. The nobles bowed their heads. The guards stepped aside. Lyra stood still. Evan watched her without flinching. The queen stopped in front of him, her wings rising like storm clouds. You survived, she said. Double quotes. Yes. Evan answered. You used your hands instead of claws. Your mind instead of fire. Evan shrugged lightly. That's what mechanics do. The queen circled him slowly, studying him like a rare metal. You did not panic, she said. Not once. Not when the beasts hunted you. Not when the chamber collapsed. Not when the lava rose around your feet. Evan looked into her burning eyes. Panic never fixed a thing. The nobles murmured again, uneasy. A human speaking plainly to a queen was something they could not understand. The queen stopped in front of him again. I want to know, she said. Her voice lower, sharper, heavier. Why you did not kneel before me? Evan breathed in slowly. Because kneeling doesn't show respect. It only shows fear. The hall fell silent. Lyra stared at him with wide eyes. The queen's expression changed. Not anger. Not pride, something else. Fear keeps nations alive, she said. Evan shook his head softly. No, fear only keeps them trembling. The queen narrowed her eyes. You think strength is gentle? Evan thought for a moment. Then he said, strength is protecting someone who can't protect themselves. Lyra's breath caught. The nobles stiffened. The queen's wings lowered. Slightly. You speak like someone who is lost, she said. Quietly. Evan looked down. Just for a moment, just long enough for even dragons to feel the weight of it. I had a daughter, he said. She was small. She got sick. I couldn't fix her. I tried everything. But machines are easier than hearts. Lyra covered her mouth, tears building in her golden eyes. The queen's voice softened. Not much, but enough to be heard. And yet you stood for my daughter. Evan nodded. She was scared. No child should face fear alone. The queen looked away, her jaw tightening like someone remembering something buried deep. Then the messenger from earlier stepped forward again, trembling. Your Majesty, the Outer Empire demands the princess's death before the bonding begins. The hall erupted. Shouts, roars, wings flaring, fire crackling. Lyra froze, terror spreading across her face. Evan stepped in front of her instinct, again. Without thought, the queen stared at him in shock. You protect her, she said slowly. Even now, when doing so could mean your own death. Evan didn't move. She's just a kid. Lyra grabbed his hand. holding it tight with shaking claws. The queen's eyes flickered, flames reflecting something human: conflict, memory, ache. She raised her hand, and the hall fell silent instantly. "The Empire fears her choice," she said. "They fear the human. They fear what it means." A noble shouted, "We must hand the girl over." Another yelled, "War will destroy us." A third hissed, "The human is the cause." The queen silenced them with a single glare. Then she turned to Evan, her voice low. "I must know one thing," she said, "before I choose war or surrender." Her eyes burned into his. "Why did you take the princess's hand just now? Was it courage? Or was it love for a child who is not yours?" Evan looked at Lyra Small, trembling, hopeful. Then he answered, "No child needs to be mine for me to care." The queen inhaled slowly. Like someone struck in the heart, the hall froze, every wing, every claw, every breath dot, and then a horn blared. A soldier ran inside shouting, "Your Majesty! The Outer Empire fleet has arrived. Hundreds of warships. They demand the princess now." Lyra tightened her grip. Evan stepped forward. The queen turned toward the flaming windows, eyes burning with decision. The sky above the Dragon Palace burned red as hundreds of enemy warships surrounded the kingdom. Their engines hummed like thunder, their cannons glowed with deadly charge, and their banners marked the symbol of the Outer Empire, a claw crushing the star. Every creature in the palace felt the pressure of approaching war. Inside the Great Hall, nobles panicked. Guards rushed to defensive positions. Fire signals lit across the balconies. But in the center of the storm, three figures stood completely still: Evan, Lyra, and the Dragon Queen. Lyra clung to Evan's arm, her claws shaking. She tried to speak, but fear stole her voice. Evan placed a steady hand on her shoulder, grounding her, shielding her, anchoring her. His calmness felt impossible, yet it was real, stronger than fire, stronger than wings, stronger than fear. The queen stared toward the open balcony, watching the enemy fleet fill the sky. Her wings slowly unfolded, glowing like molten armor. She had led armies, conquered planets, silenced rebellions, but never had she faced a threat tied to her daughter's heart. Trembling nobles stepped forward. "Your Majesty, we must hand the princess over. If we do not, the Empire will destroy us." Another shouted, "Protecting the human is madness." A third roared, "The girl's choice cannot be allowed to start a war." Lyra lowered her head, tears forming. She whispered, "I never wanted anyone to suffer because of me." Evan knelt so his eyes met hers. "You didn't cause this," he said softly. "Bullies cause fear, not the ones they target." Lyra's breath shook, but she nodded. The queen watched them, watched the way he spoke, the way Lyra listened, the way something fragile and powerful passed between them. Something the palace had never taught. Something dragons were never encouraged to feel. She turned to face her people. Her voice thundered across the hall. "The princess has made her choice." The nobles fell silent. The guards froze. Even the flames seemed to stop moving. The queen continued, "And I will honor it." Gasps erupted. One noble collapsed to his knees. Another screamed in disbelief. Generals shouted, "Then the Empire will attack." The queen raised her chin. "They may attack." She spread her wings, fire spiraling around her. "But they will not win." A deep horn echoed outside as the enemy fleet descended lower. The palace trembled as their cannons aimed. Lyra looked at her mother with wide eyes. "You believe in him?" she asked softly. The queen did not look at Evan. She said, "I believe in the one you became when he stood beside you." Evan stood straight, surprised but calm. The queen turned to him at last. "You are not dragon," she said. "You have no claws, no scales, no fire." Evan waited. "But you have something else," she finished. "Something even dragons have forgotten." The hall waited, Breathless, Evan asked quietly, "What is that?" The Queen answered, "Heart without fear." Outside, enemy cannons charged. Inside, the Queen lifted her staff. "Prepare defenses," she commanded. "Shields up. Wings to the sky. Fire to the battlements." The palace transformed instantly. Walls expanded, shields rose, towers ignited with flame turrets. Dragons leapt into the air, forming burning spirals of aerial defense. Lyra looked up at Evan. "Are you afraid?" she asked. He smiled sadly. "Of losing you?" "Yes," she blinked, stunned not by the words, but by their honesty. A guard approached the Queen. "Your Majesty, where shall the princess be taken for safety?" The Queen looked at Evan, then at Lyra. Then she said, "She stays with him." Even the wind seemed shocked. Evan placed a hand gently on Lyra's back. Protective and steady, the Queen stepped closer to him. Her voice lower. "If the Empire reaches her, if the palace falls, if fire cannot hold them back." She paused. "Will you keep her alive?" Evan nodded once. "With everything I am." The Queen held his gaze for a long, silent moment. Then she said the words that sealed the fate of nations. "Then I name you her father." A blast shook the palace. Enemy fire striking the shields. War had begun. Roared and took to the sky. Flames streaked across the clouds. Evan lifted Lyra into his arms as the floor trembled beneath them. The Queen spread her wings and launched into the air, leading the defense with a roar that shook the stars. Lyra clung to Evan's neck and whispered, "I knew I chose right." Evan held her close. "You're not alone anymore," he murmured. Outside, fire and metal clashed. Inside, hope took form. And somewhere across the galaxy, unseen and waiting, a darker force whispered, "The human father must die."